So you just saw it pop up on your screen. This presentation will be recorded, so that way if you want to watch it again later, you can. If you have any questions while I'm presenting, please do put them in the chat. One of my colleagues will be able to answer you, or we'll just get to them at the end. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Marine. I'm part of the onboarding team. Joining me today will be Duncan, one of our mentors, and Keely from our careers team. So we'll go over our course content, talk a bit about which course is right for you, about our application process and life as a graduate, and then at the end we'll have some time for questions. So I'll let Duncan cover this for us.
Cheers. Yeah, so at Northcoders we have 3 different courses that we offer, and regardless which one you do, your first 6 weeks will be the same. So we start with 1 week, which is more of sort of like an introduction, a bit of a refresher of the things that you've learned so far, before moving into fundamentals, which is pretty much the sort of fundamentals of software development, which we'll be learning about like through JavaScript, but it is applicable to many other languages. And then finally, you'll have 2 weeks of backend where we start to look at what backend engineering is. So we'll be looking at things like asynchronous programming. We'll be building servers, making APIs, and having a brief look at how databases work and that kind of thing. So from there, you'll sort of split off into your respective course. If you go down the software engineering route, you'll be looking at the front end block. So this is essentially front end. It's all about essentially just creating websites and apps and things like that. And we'll also sort of like be teaching about the basics of what makes a good user interface and a user experience. And then finally, you'll have project phase, where you'll be divided into groups and sort of sent off to plan a project and create something to show at the end. So for a lot of people, they tend to make mobile apps, but you're not limited to that. It's sort of your choice, really. So if you were to go down the data engineering route, then after backend, you would first take a look at Python. So this is just a short week just to get to grips with it. We'll also be looking at some more advanced SQL, which is something that is briefly covered in the backend block, but we look at it in more depth in data engineering. And after that, we'll have a brief look at sort of cloud operations. So there is a bit of a crossover between that and cloud engineering, but we don't go into nearly as much depth on data engineering. And then finally, you'll have your project. It's less open-ended than the software engineering, as we sort of structure it to give you a sort of realistic taste of what you will be doing as a data engineer. And then finally, if you were to go down the cloud engineering route, the topics that you would cover are the fundamentals of, well, the cloud and sort of provisioning cloud services. You'll also have a look at application deployment, and there will also be a final project, which unfortunately I don't know much about at the moment, but I imagine it would be quite similar to the data engineering one. So yeah, I think that's everything for that slide. So in terms of which course is for you, I'd say at the end of the day, it does come down to your decision. If you find that you're more interested in the sort of visual side of things, like creating websites, I'd go for the software engineering, because neither of the other 2 courses have any real sort of visual, like creating everything visual, like we do on software engineering. So if you have an interest in sort of front end web development, I'd say that's your best option. If you were sort of more into the sort of like problem solving side of things, not necessarily like visual, but just working on sort of like problems as a team and working with sort of like data, like often like big sets of data, and I suppose like creating sort of like automated workflows and that kind of thing, which I understand that you might not fully grasp now, but hopefully if you have a look at our website, you'll be able to get more of an idea of the curriculum. But I'd say that side of things is more geared for the data engineering. And similarly, the cloud engineering course, I suppose, with cloud engineering, it's less sort of like traditional coding. So you wouldn't be sort of like typing out, lines and lines of code. It's good to have like a grasp of what that is, but you'll be more interested in sort of deploying that code, getting it up and running and that kind of thing. So it's all about making sure it works, really. So yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you so much. That was a really good way to separate all our courses and explain why we're studying all of them. And if anyone watching, if you had any terms kind of go over your head, if you were like, what's an API? Don't worry, that's perfectly fine if you don't know that just yet, because that's the point of the course, is that you will actually learn this. So to actually join our course, we'll talk about the application process. As some of you may know, there is an entry challenge before you can start our course. So that's 1 hour long, where you get a series of coding questions to just work your way through. And then afterwards, you'd have a feedback call with one of our tutors. And so there'll be a chance to explain your codes, and the tutor can see whether you're ready to join our course. So this entry challenge is entirely on the basics of JavaScript. If you don't have any coding experience just yet, don't worry, that's fine. It's suitable for beginners to apply to our course. When you create an application, you'll get access to a lot of learning materials, so you can work your way through, learn everything you need. You also have some practice questions so that by the time you actually take the entry challenge, you'll know everything you need. So we also offer some extra support. We are on Slack, and when you apply with us, you'll be sent a link so that you can join us there. If you get stuck on anything, or if you have any questions, please do ask us on Slack, and either someone from onboarding or one of our tutors, if it's a more technical question, can get back to you and help you out. Similarly, we have drop-in sessions 3 times a week. So that's perfect if you're kind of struggling on a practice challenge, because they will be able to, the tutors hosting the drop-in sessions will be able to run through those practice challenges, and you can ask any questions as well. So that is a really good way to prepare for the entry challenge. And of course, you can also reach out to anyone from the onboarding team, whether it's myself, Elenia, or Kate, directly on Slack as well. So our future cohorts coming up, the next one starts 15th May, and the deadline to pass your entry challenge to join that one will be the 2nd of May. So that will be for our software engineering cohort and our data engineering bootcamp. After that, we'll have a cohort starting 3rd of July. The deadline to pass the entry challenge for that one is the 20th of June. That will be for our software engineering bootcamp and our cloud engineering bootcamp. And then on the 21st of August, we'll then have a new one. The deadline will be the 8th, and that will be our software engineering and our data engineering bootcamps. So our courses are valued at £10,000, but we do have scholarships available that cover 100% of the course costs. So to qualify for one of these, you need to be 19 or older by the 31st of August 2022. You need to be currently living in England and have the right to work in the UK. There's also some residency criteria. So the one that applies to most people is that you must have lived in the UK or the EEA for the previous 3 years. But, you know, if that's not you, if you're not quite sure what residency criteria apply to you, please do reach out to someone from onboarding and we'll be able to help you figure it out. You also can't have recently done a government-funded bootcamp. So that's, you can't have done a bootcamp where the content overlaps too much with ours. That's also not in the same tax year. So once again, if you have questions about that part, do reach out to us. So all of our group boot camps are full-time. So that's 8:30 to 5, Monday to Friday. You will need to be able to commit to that. And finally, to join our course and get the scholarship, you of course need to pass the entry challenge that I just talked about earlier. So now Keely will be able to talk to you a bit about the career support that we offer.
Thanks, Maureen. So during the bootcamp, you'll have access to a careers coach who will be dedicated to yourself. You'll be allocated those depending on the region or the area that you live in. So we have 4 coaches and you'll be allocated somebody to work with individually. And that coach will work with you on CVs, cover letters, tech tests, interviews, LinkedIn, things like workplace behaviour. So we've got lots of materials that you'll be able to access. We also have dedicated Slack channels, which are all about the careers. You'll get a one-to-one session with your dedicated coach as well, so that they can answer any specific questions that you have. And sometimes it might not be something that you want to ask in front of everybody else in the main cohort channels. We do have an exclusive jobs board where our hiring partners advertise roles. And on this, to be able to access this jobs board, your coach must sign off your CV, and then you'll have access to that board up until you either accept your first role or you've been graduated for 6 months. On that board, obviously, as I say, we've got hiring partners on there that are working with our partnerships consultants to be able to advertise those roles. So it is a mix of roles that are available across all of the boot camps that we offer as well. Thanks very much, Maureen.
Is this my slide?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just double checking. Yeah, so as you can see here, we do have quite good sort of reviews from past students. I'm actually a past student myself, so about 2.5 years ago, I had no idea what coding was at all. Like I just had this image of, you know, like black screen, green text, matrix, that kind of thing. But yeah, so essentially I was furloughed. I used to work in a nursery. I was furloughed over lockdown and had a bit of a look at Free Code Camp, decided I quite liked it and made a decision to apply for Northcoders. So I graduated just under 2 years ago and was offered a job as a mentor here. And yeah, since then, I feel like I've just learned new things pretty much constantly. So like, I felt, well, to be honest, I felt really confident after the boot camp, thinking that I knew everything. And then I quickly realized that I didn't. But since then, it's sort of like constant learning, and it's really, really, really quite interesting. So from personal experience, I would definitely recommend taking a course. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you both. So yeah, I think as you can see, you can just start the application with really not much knowledge about coding and just picturing like a hacker in your mind, but you can, by the end of the boot camp, know enough to find a job, and you'll have a very supporting team to help you. So that's the end of our presentation. You can see the QR code on the screen. If you haven't applied already, you can just scan it and it will take you straight to our application page. You can also see the email at the bottom of the screen. That's if you have any questions or you want to email onboarding directly, you can just email us on that email. And we do have some time left for questions. So please do ask in the chat any question that you have, and we'll have a run through them.
Hello, Maureen. I am happy to read out a question for you. Lee is asking about kind of the day-to-day, so the time frame being 8:30 till 5 Monday to Friday. Does that include lessons and sessions all day long? Like, what does that look like?
So you will still have breaks in between, don't worry, it's not just 8 hours straight, but it will start at 8:30. Typically you will have a lecture in the morning. You will also throughout the day have seminars, you'll have paired work, so where you're working through a coding problem with another student, and you'll have also some breaks now and then. You'll have a break for lunch, but it'll mainly be lectures, seminars and paired work.
Amazing. Do you have any more questions at all?
I know our presentation is good, but it's not that good. You must have some questions.
Is there only one attempt to pass the entry challenge?
That is a good question, actually. So you have 2 attempts. So if you don't manage to pass the first time, you'll get feedback from the tutor. They'll be able to point you towards the areas that you need to strengthen your knowledge and maybe practice a bit more. You'll have some time to, for example, join the drop-ins that I mentioned, and then you'll get to have a second attempt. But please be aware that that is your final attempt. So make sure that if you do need to go and use your second attempt, that you're very prepared when you do it.
Cool. We've got a couple of questions around kind of locations. So where are the hubs? What happens at the hub, and can you do it remotely?
Yeah, so all of our courses can be done fully remotely, but we do also have learning hubs in Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds and Newcastle. So you're very welcome to come to one of our hubs. You can sit down, have a quiet space to work, meet some other students. All the lectures are going to be on Zoom regardless, so please be aware that if you come in person, it's not going to be a traditional classroom setting. It's more of a co-working space, but it's always great to see students come as well.
Cool. Here's one that might be a good one for Keely. Would you say there are many junior roles available right now? What's kind of the landscape right now for entering tech as a junior?
Yeah, we're seeing an increase again at the moment. So obviously everyone knows that the industry has been challenging over the last few months, just due to the economic situation. But we are seeing the numbers starting to increase again, with actually a record number of grads going into work for us in March. So it's things are looking quite positive at the moment in terms of the number of roles available.
Thanks, Keely. Maureen, how long does it usually take to prepare for the entry challenge?
So it does really depend on the person, and like if you have any previous experience, and also very much how much time you have during the week. Are you able to do some every day for several hours, or will it be a little bit less? But on average, it does take about 3 weeks to start from the application process to actually having all the knowledge you need for the entry challenge.
Cool. And when you pass the entry challenge, can you enroll on a later course, or do you have to start straight away?
Yeah, so when you pass on the entry challenge, we'll ask you, firstly, which of our 3 courses you'd like to study on, and then what start date you would like. So you do have to choose a start date within the next 6 months. We do recommend that you don't pass your entry challenge before wanting to start in the next 2 months, just to make sure all that knowledge is fresh in your mind. But you could pass your entry challenge tomorrow and choose to join our July or August course. You're not just limited to the one that's coming straight after. It can be one a bit later as well.
Perfect. So this one might be one for Keely. So what kind of companies hire Northcoders graduates? Who are some of our hiring partners?
Yeah, of course. So we've had, in the last 6 years since Northcoders started, we've had over 400 hiring partners. So obviously I can't name every single one of them, we would be here all night. But within those, we've got sort of varying businesses, really, from small startups right through to large corporates. A couple of names that are recruiting actively at the moment and recruit from us on a regular basis are names like BJSS and Infinity Works. And we've just had some of our graduates go to Kraken Flex, which is sort of the parent company for Octopus Energy.
Great fun. Thanks for that, Keely. Let me just have a look at the chat. Oh, Maureen, this is a good one. What kind of percentage would you usually expect someone to get to pass the entry challenge? Is there a pass or fail mark?
So no, this is a short answer. As I mentioned earlier, there is a feedback call after with the tutor. So it's not based on a certain percentage that makes it pass or fail. It's also based on how well you're able to answer the questions that you did answer. Can you show just a really good understanding of your code? So even if you only answered half of the questions, but clearly you understand those very well, that would be fine. If you understood all of them, but you couldn't explain the word that you wrote, that would be an issue.
Perfect. Thanks, Maureen. And I've got another question kind of around what happens if you need to miss time during the course of things like childcare, school runs, our lectures recorded. How do we kind of handle that? Are there any issues around that?
So we do expect excellent attendance on our course because it's a pretty fast-paced course, 13 weeks to give you all the skills to become, to be in a junior role in the industry. But, we do know that sometimes things do come up. So we'll ask you to plan to be able to attend from 8:30 to 5, Monday to Friday. If something does come up, please tell your tutors as soon as possible. Our lectures aren't recorded, but there'll be class notes that they're able to give you so that you can catch up.
Amazing. So Adam has a follow-up question. So the lectures are all on Zoom. Do we come into the hubs to come in and learn the material? Could you clarify that a little bit more, Maureen? What happens at the hub? So the hub is more of a co-working space. So for example, when you get paired work on the course, if you come in person and there's another student from your same cohort also there in person, then the tutors will try and put you in the pair together. So that means that you're able to work with the person sitting next to you rather than on Zoom, which can be quite nice. But so the bulk of the teaching will be on Zoom. But if you're there in person, you get to chat to the other members of the Northcoders team who are there as well, and the other students of your cohort who are also working besides you. Thanks. And if you have any special education needs, can we do anything around the time frame of the entry challenge to support that? Of course. So if you do have educational needs, please do tell us. We can give you a bit of extra time if you usually do get extra time in an exam setting at school. So you just need to let us know. And also just in general, if there's anything we can do that you think will help, please reach out. Even if we've not done it before, we can at least look at what we can do to support you in the situation. Cool. We've got another question, which is interesting. What are kind of the key differences between doing a boot camp like ours, specifically ours, and something like a computer science degree? I think, Maureen, you're going to have some thoughts on this, and maybe even Duncan. I know I have thoughts on it. I would say one of the key one that stands out for me is computer science degree might be more based on theory and sort of understanding the current climate in the tech industry. But our bootcamp is very much focused on concrete work, on creating a portfolio of projects. So it's really, it's coding, it's not theory, you're actually doing it. But Duncan, if you have more to say about that, you're actually coding, so you might have some insight.
Yeah, so I think computer science degrees, like you say, they do tend to be a lot of theory, which is useful because it's good to have like that background knowledge and you can really like build on it. But like our courses, we're actually like actively talking to these like employers that we work with. So we find out what they want from like a junior developer in whatever role, and we use that to tailor our courses. So I think something that you might hear about computer science degrees is that while you definitely do learn a lot, it might not be like immediately useful. It might be a bit like outdated or something like that, whereas ours is very much sort of like tailored to meet the demand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's true. We're
Yeah.
constantly updating our curriculum based on feedback from our hiring partners. And also another thing is that our bootcamp is 13 weeks. A degree typically takes, a good while longer.
Amazing. Maureen, what's our pass rate like for the entry challenge?
So as I said, before you actually take the entry challenge, we did give you everything you need to prepare. So I'm happy to say we do have a very good pass rate. On average, 85% of students who attempt it do pass.
And if you're in that 15, it does happen. You just get your second attempt. I've got one for Keely. What is it like coming from our DevOps cloud engineering bootcamp, which has actually just started? No one has graduated from that course yet. How will these grads be hired? Am I correct in thinking we already have jobs for cloud engineering grads on the jobs board?
So they're not on the jobs board just yet because we haven't got people on the jobs board from that cohort at this present moment in time, and obviously we don't want to start advertising those to other people. So the roles aren't on the board, but we are in conversations with employers that are looking to hire from sort of the DevOps Cloud Engineering Bootcamp at the moment. We do have lots of data opportunities on the board. I had just sort of mentioned in an answer to that a little bit further down in the chat, the figures that we've got from those, because we've only just started to graduate from the data and from the cloud engineering, aren't necessarily a true representation at the moment, because a lot of people go through interview processes from those, and obviously having not graduated a full cohort for the cloud engineering, it's really difficult to give true figures on any of those at the moment. But we are seeing quite a lot of them starting to go into work and a lot of interview activity around those as well.
Amazing, thanks, Keely. Maureen, do we give out certificates, and do we give out any accredited qualifications similar to?
So we don't have third-party certification. We do have a Northcoders certificate, but not a third-party one. And that's, as Duncan mentioned, we do want to be able to consistently update our course when there's new things happening in the industry, new things that employers are looking for. So if we weren't going to have a third-party qualification, we wouldn't be able to update everything as much as we do.
Amazing, thanks. Duncan, I think I've got one for you. What kind of data engineering work do people typically go on to do? Is it all based in SQL, or do we also cover other databases?
So I'm not 100% sure. Like, I'd have to speak to our graduates and find out what they're actually working on. I think a lot of data engineering work is now done on the cloud. So that's why, like, we cover it briefly in our course, the data engineering course, sorry. But yeah, so in terms of big databases, you'd probably be, commonly be working with SQL, but I think part of the work as a data engineer is that you'll have like data from various different sources. So that could be like a traditional database. It could be like, say, CSV files or like a spreadsheet or anything. So you've got to work with like various different sort of data sources and compile them, really.
Amazing, thanks, Duncan. I'm just going through the questions, hoping I've not missed any. We have a minute left, so if anyone's got like a last minute question, which course is most suitable to become a data analyst, Maureen?
So I think that would be our data engineering course, but I do want to stress it is slightly different. A data analyst does not do exactly the same thing as a data engineer, and we don't offer specifically a data analyst course. So I think the best of the three we offer would be data engineering, but do be aware that there are some differences.
Yeah, so a data engineer works with the data to then give it to a data analyst. So a data analyst can analyze the data. A data analyst can't analyze raw data, and that's why a data engineer exists in the first place. So they work chronologically on two different parts of the pipeline. Okay, so the final big question. It's really hard to choose between the three different courses. Do we have any last minute advice? I personally would say look at job listings on LinkedIn. See what day-to-day things do employers describe their job listings as, a software dev or a platform cloud engineer as. So I would really recommend looking at job listings. Do we have any more last minute advice for deciding?
Job listings is the best way forward. So looking at, like you say, looking at LinkedIn, the government websites as well, the Pathways has a lot of information on there around the different types of job roles that you can go into in the industry and what the day-to-day would look like on those. There's a lot of information available on Glassdoor as well. So if you were to search sort of data engineer, cloud engineer, software engineer, you'll look back and be able to see what the roles and responsibilities typically would look like. Obviously, they'll vary business to business, but by reviewing information like that, you'll start to see what you feel more comfortable with and where you see your career going.
Amazing, thanks. Okay, I think we're gonna have to wrap up because we're running over by 1 minute. I'll leave it to you, Maureen.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope this was a useful session. And yeah, like I said, email us any questions if you have them, and hope you have a good rest of your day.